everybody. And I see people waving. Yes, hello. Yes, let's wave to each other. That's good to stretch out a little bit. I hope you had a nice break. And hands up, everybody who said hello to a new person. Oh, you're excellent. I see you people waving behind the screen as well. Excellent. Let's keep that up and continue with the togetherness. This next session and this oral session will be about bias or identity-based bullying and Denmark as an interesting example of successful anti-bullying approaches and initiatives. And we will listen to three very, very interesting presentations. So, with me on stage, Dorte Søndergaard, professor in social psychology at Aarhus Universitet. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, let's give her a hand, of course. And also Heidi Johannesen, legal consultant at the Danish Center for School Environment. Yes.
Thank you.
And in your schedule, there is also a third name, Laila Lagermann. She holds a PhD in educational psychology, and she is also an expert in school abuse and ethnic minorities, and she works with that around schools in Denmark. Fortunately, Laila got a bit ill and couldn't make it, but she didn't let that stop her in the fight for anti-bullying. So she sent us a video. Let's watch that here.
Thank you for this opportunity to present my paper on this recorded version. So student school absence and early school leaving is often individualized, inviting us to see these individual students as the problem and intervene accordingly. In doing so, structures, ideologies, and practices that may exclude these students systematically are left unaddressed. My presentation today underlines how listening to students in their everyday lives, voices that are often silenced, enables us to unravel the underlying processes of bullying, school exclusion, and discrimination that have been shown to be implicated in young people's opting out of school. Student-voiced research can help us understand intricate social mechanisms that otherwise would remain invisible. In this presentation, I wish, along with a social constructionist, discursive, psychological approach, to examine social categories such as race, ethnicity, and religion as something that is both reproduced as part of concrete social practices as well as wider societal structures. The research material is drawn from 3 separate studies on marginalization, school absence, and bias-based bullying, respectively, in upper secondary schools. The analysis focuses on the narratives of 4 students from these 3 data sets: Aisha, Sarah, Mira, and Mohammed. For Mohammed and Sarah, their experiences of racialized school exclusion and bullying are directly implicated in their school absence and opting out of school. So studies in teachers' expectations have shown how social categories such as gender, race, and ethnicity are intertwined in understandings and expectations related to certain students in upper secondary schools. Some teachers may, as part of larger school cultures, even if unattended, support discrimination, exclusion, and bullying by their own biased interaction. An example of this is given to us by Sarah, a Muslim girl in upper secondary school. Sarah states, she, the teacher, said general things like, if you can't participate in the Freshers' Week trip, I will help you. And more specific, and yeah, Sarah, it's kind of you and people like, it's kind of you I'm thinking of, because most often it's you guys that are not allowed. It was something like that. So she already had that expectation, you know. She totally stereotyped me in front of all the other students. And it wasn't fair because I don't even come from this kind of family at all, where things like Freshers' Week trips has ever been a problem. And it's kind of that white savior, like, come because I know what's good for you. And it's kind of self-satisfied, like, I know you have these challenges. Let me come and help you, you know, because I've got the right stances and opinions and, well, whatever. So educational researcher and professor of critical race studies, David Gilborn, underlines how school contexts are framed by teachers' formal and informal constructions of the ideal student, and how these constructions, and how within these constructions, social class, gender, and racial notions and conceptualizations of appropriate studentness are incorporated. This ideal has proven to hold decisive limiting implications for how African Caribbean boys in British schools are seen and understood. In Sarah's experience, her dark skin and her wearing a Muslim headscarf counteract her opportunities to, by this specific teacher, be recognized as an appropriate student. Instead, she's recognized as someone who needs help to move towards this appropriateness, which in the version launched by the teacher seems to be equivalent with more Danish and thereby with the shape of the majority of the students. It's well known from the Expos bullying research project led by Dorte Søndergaard that teachers' handling of and ways of interacting with the students in the classroom impact how the students interact with each other also outside the classroom. Maybe this can partly explain Sarah's loneliness regarding the other students. I had no one to talk to or have a relation to, as she explains to me. As is briefly glimpsed here in Aisha's narratives, the interview material contains social categories such as race, ethnicity, gender, and Muslimness that form identities and subjectivity, as was the case with Sarah. And like Sarah, Aisha's Muslimness is visible by her wearing the Muslim headscarf. It appears that the markers of difference which they both experience render them hypervisible in what researchers refer to as the white gaze of the majority. A hypervisibility which, as expressed by Aisha here and Sarah just before, is first and foremost felt as an inability to pass, but also one that makes the two racialized young people feel like bodies out of place in a society where the somatic norm is inherently white. In other words, the experience of racialization becomes that of racial embodiment, of being looked upon as a racialized body and subject in a white society. The hypervisibility of the Muslim headscarf becomes a direct cause for remarks questioning Aisha's Danishness. It also establishes an implicit link between wearing a Muslim headscarf and not belonging in Denmark. In other words, both of the cases with respectively Sarah and Aisha speak to the intersection of non-whiteness and religion. In her book, Strange Encounters, Embodied Others in Post-Coloniality from 2000, Sarah Ahmed shows us how one's racial identity is not simply determined by, for example, the fact of one's skin color. Instead, racialization is a process that takes place in time and in space. As Ahmed argues, we cannot trace the production of racial bodies without reference to the history of European colonialism. Listening to the four young people's narratives on racialized bullying exemplify this in plenty. For instance, Mira explains to me how she's been met with comments like, "Ew, you're a Negro, you need to be whipped." So Ahmed's term, racialized bodies, suggests that we cannot understand the production of race without reference to embodiment. If racialization involves multiple historically processes, then these processes involve the marking out of bodies as the site of racialization itself. Hence, race is an effect of racialization rather than its cause, and the racial body is a product of the process of racialization. Muhammad is a 15-year-old Afro-Danish boy who had started a new school 2 months before I met him for an interview. He moved from his old school in a western district in Denmark, and Muhammad's narratives of his everyday school life in his old school explain some of the reasons why. Muhammad says, people over there at the old school, they made some racist jokes, and that wasn't fun at all. I told them that they should stop, but they said, for instance, do you need to go to your country and get some water? And that wasn't funny, you know, because Africa has some water issues, so they kept saying jokes like that. Muhammad's words once again underline how the hypervisibility of his dark brown skin becomes a direct cause for derogatory remarks. But that's not all. As seen through the comment, go to your country, an immediate link is being made between Muhammad's non-white skin and his not belonging in Denmark. Drawing on Judith Butler and her use of the concept of abjection, Professor Dorte Søndergaard describes how the abject designates that which has been expelled from the body, discharged as excrement, literally rendered other. Professor Dorte Staunes describes how abjectification is when something is exiled completely, implying that we can no longer deal with it. Hence, the adjectified, in this case Muhammad, becomes something categorically different from the othered. It becomes the unlivable zones of social life. The process of othering taken to the extreme of objectification, as shown in all four cases, can contribute to an understanding of why, as according to Mulvey and colleagues from 2018, why the victims of bias-based bullying have greater odds of experiencing serious negative outcomes than do victims of non-bias-based bullying. An example of this is the minority stress many minoritized people experience, a concept that describes the specific liability related to living as a minority in a society. Drawing on pain, I argue that overt acts of violence against non-white youth are only the surface level explicit effects of a dominant white school culture that celebrate the ideal white student mentioned earlier. In this sense, the dominant understanding of bullying fails to acknowledge dominant social systems of power that support acts of racialized bullying targeted at non-white students. I argue with Payne and Smith for a broader worldview that encompasses cultural systems of power, particularly along the lines of gender, race, and religion, that persistently privilege specific groups of youth while marginalizing others. Shifting the definition of the problem in this way requires recognition of how aggression functions in processes of social positioning and how patterns of youth aggression are reflective of cultural norms for race and gender expressions. Bullying, hence, is a tool for preservation of the status quo and the privileging of whiteness. It reflects, reproduces, and prepares young people to accept inequalities embedded in larger social structures. In this sense, I argue that inequality regarding race, ethnicity, religion, etc., should be addressed by purposefully promoting social justice for all children, also non-white students, as part of a broader whole school ethos that celebrates diversity and challenges inequities of all kinds. So based on my PhD research, the following is an attempt to do so. It's the foundation for the work I do today with teachers and principals in schools across Denmark. The concept of what I've named critical color conscious pedagogy can be boiled down to what I refer to as the 3 A's. In short, this approach is about being aware that you as a professional have and create certain images of the ideal student, and that gender, social class, and racial conceptualizations of the ideal color these images. It's also related to being aware of and recognize that social inequity exists. Hair and skin color, including ethnicity, nationality, and religious sense of belonging, have a crucial impact both inside and outside school, and that this affects the students' understanding of who they are. In other words, we can't cancel these categorizations by acting colorblind and pretend like they don't exist and don't have an impact on the students and their lives. The critical aspect is highly important because it implicates that we, on the other hand, cannot and must not make the children's ethnic minority background the first, only, and definitive explanation to their personality and behavior. Iram Kavaya describes how desire with regard to her concept of doing community is often related to the desire to belong to and to be recognized in the acts of community. This is what Professor Bronwyn Davis calls longing for belonging. Belonging contains longing, which can be said to cover the emotional dimension of longing for something, to have a desire for something. Children in school cannot quit like adults can if they're unsatisfied with the way things are at their workplace. Quite the contrary, children and young people are more or less forced to be in school every day for 10 years, even if life there is unlivable, in Butler's words. And it's important that we take this condition seriously, because not doing so is not just ethically irresponsible, but may also have serious consequences, individual as well as societal. This is my suggestion, shown on the slide, as to how to create a school culture characterized by children's experiences of belonging and belonging together with others, a concept which has also shown to be effective with regard to lowering school absence and early school leaving. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Laila. Let's give her a hand. Thank you. Very, very interesting. And on that note, I'm waiting to hear your presentation.
Are you sure I'm next?
Oh, maybe was it you?
No, it is
No?
you.
Is it me?
Yeah.
We are all agreed. So let's give a big hand to Dorte Marie Søndergaard, Professor.
Right. Well, I shall be talking about bullying saturated by the meanings and doings of social categories, and I'll do so through a particular case. The complex texture in this case and in bullying intertwined with gender, ethnicity, and social class and other social categories make the necessity to always invite situated analysis evident, while simultaneously taking the structural inequalities into account in our understanding and intervention. First, however, a few words about bullying. My thinking is grounded in what we now call the social turn of bullying research. The social perspective on bullying was, however, I'm sorry, I should have proceeded a bit more. The social turn on bullying was, however, what we worked to refine already from the beginning in 2007, which was when we launched the Danish bullying research project EXPAS. Our ambition was to understand mechanisms of bullying, and with our roots in a tradition of Nordic childhood and youth studies, we decided to explore the complexities of bullying by seeing with the children and young people instead of looking at them. With this ambition, our research methods had to be mainly qualitative. We visited schools and after-school facilities. We interviewed students about their everyday school life. We did fieldwork and interviewed parents and school principals, and we also did surveys. This overall qualitative approach made it possible for us to understand some of the social mechanisms involved in the production, maintenance, and often also dissolution of marginalization and bullying. And just briefly, some of these mechanisms appeared to grow out of classroom cultures saturated with tension and anxiety of social exclusion, of mutual policing and fighting. This anxiety encouraged students to seek security by establishing hierarchies and exclusionary groups, and to reinforce the group boundaries by harassing and producing contempt targeting someone outside these groups. Many of you have heard that before because we have said it a couple of times already at this conference. Now, in this comprehensive research material, we saw school environments haunted by such social tensions and thus bullying behavior emerging from an intricate entanglement of social, cultural, technological aspects of everyday life, and further entangled with school policies and agendas, with the teaching and authority strategies practiced by teachers, with school governance, and with structures that extend far beyond the individual school. And this is where normativities related to social categories come into play. Because we also saw how all of these entangled processes and patterns of bullying were saturated with normativities like linked to gender, ethnicity, sexuality, social class, and a mixture of such categories. Normativities rooted in social categories form expectations and taken for granted ways of judging and valuing each other in relation to social belonging. When expectations embedded in social category normativities are not met, then the young people risk being seen and singled out as not only strange and unintelligible, but also as socially irrelevant to include, to understand, to listen to. These are the unintelligible become invisible and uninteresting, or they become the designated targets of bullying. So what is important here is that the potential exclusion that often follows may not only increase, but also ally with bullying patterns in those school environments that are saturated with social tensions. I'll just give you a very brief illustration that starts from a recent set of compiled interviews done by some of my students. The children involved here are 10 to 11-year-old and attend an ordinary school in the outskirts of Copenhagen. Social tensions are obvious among the students when the young researchers meet the groups for interview, and the first recounting from the children is about Mahmoud being continuously beaten up by 3 peers. When the beating is worst and Mahmoud cannot stop crying, the teachers sometimes send him home to, as they say, cool off, and the 3 boys doing the beating are told to behave. Now, the old bullying definition and its focus on the individuals and psychological dysfunction would invite us to describe Mahmoud as defensive and weak, and his bullies as aggressive, and direct our attention further to the parents and their upbringing. But if we leave that conceptualization of bullying behind and join the social turn, our curiosity opens to a more comprehensive set of entanglements. First, we'll allow the 3 appointed villains to help us lift the gaze. The 3 boys beat up Mahmoud, they tell, because he is a disgusting faggot. He's a bitch, he's weak, and he doesn't take football seriously. And worst of all, he plays with the girls. He should be destroyed, they say. Apparently, Mahmoud doesn't do masculinity appropriately. And the 3 boys suspect he won't do heteronormative sexuality appropriately either when that time comes. So how come that these 3 boys care so much about Mahmoud's behavior and choices of activities in company? Why is it so important to them? It doesn't seem important to the other boys in the school class. They don't really care. So let's lift the gaze even further. Christopher and William, and now the skin colors start to emerge and insist on their relevance in our case here. Christopher and William are white, and they have unknown numbers of generation Danes behind them in their recounting of family and national identity. Mahmoud and the 3 boys that beat him up are brown, and only few generation Danes. Christopher and William keep repeating in their group interview that brown boys are ISIS boys, they're terrorists, they just want to fight, and they should fuck off back to the countries they come from. The brown boys are under a lot of pressure here, And the three of them are particularly dedicated to maintain their relevance in the social hierarchy in the school class. Those three boys use football, competence, and a particular version of masculinity to ensure their belonging and identity, and most of all, their social and physical strength. They take inspiration from some of the groups of same color and gender in their neighborhood, and they anticipate respect as a potential linked to that identity. Being in that situation, they so much don't need Mahmoud to question the brown identity by not doing brown masculinity in their version appropriately. They want to erase him. They wish he would evaporate, disappear in the air, to be able to counter the white boys with an unchallenged surface of brown masculinity in boy version. So here we have to realize the necessity of including more than just Mahmoud and the three brown boys in a situated analysis and a subsequent intervention. The machinery tends to expand. Our horizon of input has to expand too, and even further so. Because behind the white boys and the brown boys, we have the white teachers. They don't really see the problems. Yeah, sure, the boys fight, but that's what boys do, isn't it? And yeah, it's a little tough for Mahmoud. They do see that, and he does cry a lot. But honestly, couldn't he stop playing with the girls and just be a normal boy? That might actually help a lot, they say. They don't really see the aggression from the white boys, and those boys are also somehow more strategic in when and how they exhibit their contempt for the brown boys. Some might consider bringing in the term microaggression here. But the horizon of our understanding may expand even further, because behind the white boys are families that share a particular understanding of the brown population. They are informed by right nationalist discourses, boosted by the Danish government policy that keeps repeating the risk of allowing more Middle East people to our country. Risk of terror, risk of violence, of extended crime, etc. This rhetoric echoes in the homes of the white boys, and they draw heavily on that rhetoric when they work on their identity projects and belonging in the group of 10-year-old peers, reflected in the identity of the white teachers. The boys don't really know much about history or about politics, but they have access to this, and they use this strong discourse full of promises of belonging, of social safety and legitimacy and respect, national belonging. The brown boys feel threatened and scared by that rhetoric. It's not only their relevance and position in the school class that's questioned here, it's their own and their families and the families' friends that are questioned as belonging in the very country where they are born and raised. But there are also girls. In the interviews, dualistic gender categories are unchallenged. The girls giggle a lot when the interviewers ask really stupid questions that confuse what boys and girls do. Boys and girls don't play together. And if they do, there are rules. Girls are caught, boys catch. The boys tell that the girls play childish games. They wouldn't want to do that. And girls tell that the boys just want to fight. They wouldn't want to do that. So there are no big deconstructive projects working along lines of fluid gender or anything of that sort here, it seems. Apart from Mahmoud, all boys, but particularly the three brown boys, are eager to distinguish themselves from girls, and that is a prerequisite for their claim to strong masculinity. They need the girls to stay girl-positioned and to confirm, respectively, the brown or the white masculinity as the strongest, with an aspiration of also being the most attractive within a heterosexual matrix. The girls maintain their own hierarchies, groups, and bullying patterns among themselves while interacting with these boy positionings. And Haneen, a brown girl, supports and understands the brown boys explicitly. She is, however, also gentle with her recounting and explanation of Mahmoud, but for that she's forgiven by the brown boys that merely sees this as girl weakness. The dominating white girl, however, also defends Mahmoud and thereby annoys the 3 brown boys tremendously because she makes the white boys laugh when she does so, and she makes them applaud, and she collects support from them in her emphasis of Mahmoud as an okay brown boy. So the mechanisms and the ways in which bullying and social category normativities entangle get still more intricate as we allow the horizon of understanding to expand. Let's lift the gaze even a little further to school level, and now I combine elements from other cases to challenge our thinking. In the parallel school class, the brown boys are the majority, and these brown boys also hate the right nationalist rhetoric. They share a lot of anger about that rhetoric, and quite often the few white boys in that school class are attacked verbally and physically, taken to represent and being punished for that rhetoric. Particularly the 2 middle-class white boys that are seen as heavily privileged by their socioeconomic background are victims of ongoing bullying from the brown boys in that school class. But then a brown upper middle-class boy starts in that class, son of a person belonging to the brown culture elite that is growing in Denmark. This boy is strong in social and verbal skills. He has easy access to technology, new technology, to cool clothes and gadgets, prestigious traveling, not to the Middle East like the rest, but to New York, to London, and new things start happening with him entering the scene. He sees Mahmoud and finds him interesting. And I could continue. I haven't even brought in the digital aspects and the algorithms that invite and reinforce particular kinds of interaction. Neither the neoliberal pressure and its social effects. Mahmoud being beaten up is merely one expression of this machinery and its production of aggression and bullying. This is a comprehensive machinery that produces all sorts of harm to circulate among students differentiated by gender, by colors, social background, sexuality, religion, and much more. And bullying practices ally with all such social differentiations when struggles about belonging and respect, acknowledgement, and dignity are played out. Therefore, situated in complexity-sensitive analysis and being prepared for processual movements and intricacies are needed when we want to understand, prevent, and intervene. Also, knowledge about structural inequalities and social category policing is needed. Oh, I was one behind. Could you follow me anyway? Oh, sorry. And these are just some references that you can go back to and see if you want. Yep. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dorte Marie Søndergaard. Very, very interesting. And now we would like to hear Heidi Johannesen. Give her a big hand.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting this important forum, and thank you for coming. My name is Heidi Johannesen, as Frida just stated, and I'm the Senior Legal Consultant in National Bullying Complaints Board in Denmark. I'll present some signs of implementing the new turn in Denmark based on numbers from 114 closed cases in the National Bullying Complaints Board. It's important for me to say that many schools are working with these things in a very constructive way already, and Denmark has a decreasing numbers for bullying. So these numbers and experiences are from where it didn't work out. So this is Danish Center of Education and Environment and the National Bullying Complaints Board. These are the topics I'd like to address today. The Danish legislation, first off, with the bullying should be seen as a social phenomenon, early reaction, and systematic approach. Then also to dive into the numbers and tendencies, and last but not least, what do we know after the first 4 years? Yes. So, legislation first. The United Nations initially criticized Denmark for not having a stronger focus on bullying in schools. In 2017, we formed a law that was based on the experiences from other Nordic countries. The three significant things were that the schools should react earlier and work systematically, and that the rules are based on bullying as a social phenomenon. The new turn, the second paradigm. So this was actually, it's in the law that the second paradigm should be the basis for the Danish rules, the basis for how schools should handle bullying in Denmark. So one of the important changes here was basing the system on the second paradigm. And I'm sure many of you know, we've been through it a couple of times here, but I'll just brush you briefly through it. The new, the old paradigm, or the first paradigm, in Denmark it is the old one. The former paradigm, it's about evil, aggressive bullies and weak victims, bullies and victims here. And the upbringing and the psychological factors are important in this paradigm. Punishing the bully and making the victim stronger is important in that paradigm. Then in 2007, there was this important research from Danish experts and others that formed this new paradigm. This is where bullying occurs because of the group dynamics. This is a systematic approach. The urge to belong is so strong that if you fear exclusion, you'll try to make others less worthy members of the community, and then bullying occurs. We went from he or she is bullied because he has glasses or he's brown skin and so on, to he is bullied with these things. Yes. So if we dive down a little bit in the early reaction question, we could ask, has this been implemented in Denmark now? Do we get it, everyone? But if I look at it, the schools should react earlier. This is called bullying or similar dynamics in the Danish law. So this word is actually a little bit hard to understand, and many schools don't react as early as the law intended. They shouldn't. So the rules apply on bullying, but it doesn't apply on the small conflicts that you would see in the everyday school life, in the everyday life. But the similar dynamics places itself right in the middle of those two. So the schools should be looking for some of the early signs instead of just waiting for the bullying to happen. And that would be, for instance, lack of empathy towards some of their peers. It would maybe be loneliness because you don't want to be in the group, so you choose your own loneliness, steep boundaries between groups in the community and so on. And this systematic approach, as the third factor here, is in the rules you have to ask yourself if what you see in the school is, there could be events in science, some of the early signs, so the school is supposed to ask itself, is this bullying or similar dynamics? This is what's supposed to happen. And if the school says, yes, this is bullying or similar, it doesn't react, similar dynamics, you should make a thorough investigation in order to handle the causes instead of just the symptoms, and make an action plan. And for this very thorough investigation, and also for asking yourself if this is bullying at all, you have only 10 days. That's a very short time. Also, in this period of time, you could put in some temporary reactions to the situation so that it doesn't go on and on. And last but not least, the schools should inform students and parents in order to have everyone working on the same page, in order to have everyone knowing what's going on, so they can react accordingly. Yes. So this brings me to the next part of the program here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers and the tendencies that we see from these cases in the National Complaints Board. The National Complaints Board only looks at cases where the school hasn't been handling the bullying. So you can't have a case where someone complains about being bullied, because that will happen from time to time. The thing that you can complain about is that the school doesn't handle it. Maybe that's important to know in the numbers to come. So The National Bullying Complaints Board shows this steep curve in receiving complaints. But with Corona came also homeschooling and less bullying cases. We received approximately 230 complaints that haven't been through the first level of handling complaints, and 123 cases that are ready for the National Bullying Complaints Board. So we've been working at 123 cases, but we received almost 340 all in all. Yes. So let's dive in a little bit. I was speaking about this paradigm being important. So how does it look in the actual cases? I'll present you with some numbers here. The individual approach in finding the cause, if you look at the cases, 70% of them is about whether or not this is bullying. So parents and school, they don't agree on whether this is something that should be taken action on or not. Also, 42% of our cases have the tag individual approach. You can also see that in 12% in our cases, the school would state that there's something wrong with the individual child, the child from the parents who's been complaining. Either the individual child is very anxious and cautious, or if it's the bully, then this bully is having individual problems that they've already solved individually. For instance, a diagnosis. So it seems, if you look exclusively at our cases, the 114, that it's still very common in these cases to have the paradigm 1. It's still the individual approach. So that's one thing. The second paradigm is important. The next thing is whether the early reaction has been implemented. The thing with the circle where they have to look for early signs. So I'm going to give you a little bit of numbers here and tell a little bit about them, and then afterwards say why I think that these are signs that maybe we're not there yet. 62% of the cases is about boys. So boys' parents have been complaining. 19% of the cases are in the 4th grade. And you should note that in 3rd grade, up until 3rd grade in Denmark, you have pedagogical employees that are also in the class. And maybe they're a little bit better at spotting the early problems. So in the 4th grade, that's our biggest complaints age, if you could say so. Then we have physical elements, violence, if you prefer to use that word, physical elements in 53% of our cases. Digital problems, not so much, only 10%. And last but not least, we can see that changing schools in the process of complaining is quite high. 38% in all, they change schools while either the first level of complaint handling is handling the case, or we handle the case. 27% in the first level and 11% in our level. This is a sign that we know that this is because they have been fighting with the school over months, sometimes years, about handling the situation. And then finally they find out that there's a possibility they can complain. So they file the complaint and hope that something will change for the better. But they just have had enough. They just give up at this point. So this could, all in all, show that the early signs are not yet being detected. It's easier to react when you see something physical, and note that there are many boys here. So maybe the girls' kind of bullying isn't actually conceived. They don't understand that as bullying. It's something else. In Danish, you have a word called pigefnidder, which means that the girls, they would, bicker against one another. And maybe this is also a reason why you would think that girls, they're supposed to be like that. So it's okay that they feel bullied, because this is just pigefnidder. This is just this certain kind of girls acting out against each other. The third thing that was very important for these rules was the systematic approach. Whoop, there it is. The systematic approach before the complaint. As I said before, 70% of the cases is about whether this is even bullying. And the action plan, the plan where you implement something that's actually going to work, that's only 30%. So it seems that there's a lot of fighting against looking at this as bullying, because only 30% of the cases is about the actual action planning. The number of first complaints, if someone sends a complaint to us, we'll have to send it back to the first level if it's not already been handled there. And sometimes they don't find each other. Actually, as you can see here, my number is 62% of these cases, the case is sent back to us. So the municipality, which is the first level, and the school were supposed to find a good solution with the complaining parent. But in 62% of the cases, they don't look at bullying, they don't look at systematic approach the way that a parent would find equivalent to the problem, so the parents would complain. In 25% of these cases, it's the school looking at the complaint again, so the school should have been reacting, and the school is looking at the complaint again. But this is before they make a complaint. The Danish Center or the Danish Bullying Complaints Board have a possibility to make an injunction, meaning that the schools should do what they haven't done until now. And we can see in these cases where we give massive guidance along with the injunction, where we try to guide them what is the systematic approach, how you're supposed to look for the early signs, what to look for in the early signs, and so on. That seems to actually help. We hear this not only from our own numbers, which I'll show you in just a second, we also know this from Opinion, which made a big investigation for the Danish Ministry of Education about this. And the numbers say that if we have made an injunction and actually guided the school as to how to do this, how to watch out for the new signs, the small signs, how to react, how to make an action plan, and so on. If we guide them into these rules, of course not in the actual case, but if we guide them into the rules, only 3% of the classes seem to continue to have a problem. So it seems that guidance helps, but on the other hand, it also seems that before this guidance, it's very difficult to grasp for the schools, at least for the schools we have in our complaints. Yes. So let me just shortly sum up here. Based on the cases sent to National Bullying Complaints Board, the bullying seen as a social phenomenon doesn't seem to be very significant in the cases that we see. It's more common to see the first paradigm. It's also very difficult to have this early reaction in the schools before when they're struggling with the parents about how to handle the situation. And then, last but not least, the systematic approach, where you're supposed to work with it until the problem is over, doesn't seem to be as common. So, if you could say that, I'll just go to this one instead, because of the time. There is many schools actually working with this already, but there's also still a need for a big change, and it is in progress. We need to still have a focus on how we view children, how we view parents, and also on working together and have this curious investigation about the children in the school, and the leaders' view on human beings is also still very, very important. This was my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Heidi. And also, we can welcome Laila, I think, online. Yeah, I think she's with us. Yeah, there she is. Wonderful. Actually, I would like to congratulate you. As we heard earlier, Magnus said on stage, for those of you who were with us in that session, that Sweden has sort of been playing, right, for the...
increase.
Yeah, increase a little bit. Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to go with the school minister. She was like, yeah, we're... No, but you're right. Fortunately, we have an increase in bullying. Norway is sort of steady, and you managed to actually find the success factors. Dorte, would you like to explain what is the main key to success for the Danish approach? We want to learn.
Well, as Helle said, Helle is right up there, as she said, we don't have the research, so I cannot say it is this one component that is the reason why we managed to get the numbers down. But I do think we did something that had an effect and an impact, and that was working with the understanding of bullying widely in the school system and in policy, in the policy body, and among principals, among parents, etc., etc. When we started out in Exbus, and a lot of work had been done already before, we had a what do you call that? A room of resonance that was very much prepared to listen. We had child organizations that were very interested. We had school teachers that experienced that whatever they did, it didn't seem to help much. And then we came and said, come on, let's think about this in a different way. And we started to do this research where we came up with this more complexity kind of focused explanation. And what we did, and we did it very enthusiastically, I must say. Some people will think we were too enthusiastic, but we were very enthusiastic in terms of bringing out that turn in the understanding, bringing that out widely in the schools. And I don't think there are anybody in the schools that don't know about the social understanding of bullying. And just to add this last point, I think we didn't have a program that was kind of mechanistic or that said you have to do this and this and this in that and that situation. We didn't have that. But we did change the mindset. And that mindset made it possible for people in practice to make their own decisions on a new basis. And that was a difference from before. I think it had an impact.
Interesting. I spoke to someone in this conference who or was it Anna that said that bullying in school is really a reflection of bullying in society? And we heard both of you mention parents as a key factor, and we haven't spoken so much about parents yet. I wanted to ask Laila, you are traveling around in Denmark, right, and helping school with these very important issues. How do you work with the parents? Do you work with them at all, or how do you get the word out to them?
No, I don't work with the parents that much. I work with the teachers and the principals primarily. So no, I don't get to work with the parents that much. And the reason why I don't do that is because I focus on the educational settings, and also around the world, we've seen examples that schools are able to lift children, regardless of what they come from, of socioeconomic backgrounds or ethnic, religious, whatever background. So my main focus is on the schools and working with the teachers there in order to I experience this individualized perspective as well, as we've heard both in these presentations, but also earlier. And I think the main thing for me is to encourage the teachers to be curious and to stay curious and not shut down, because like we've heard on earlier presentations, the teachers have a lot of things going on, a lot of things on their plates. So they sometimes have a tendency to want to fix too quick. That's what I see as the problem, and that's what I try to, keep. Keep encourage them to keep up the curiosity.
Yeah. I guess their work must be so much easier if there would be no bullying in classes. I guess the students would receive a higher performance in school, and that the teacher's job would be even more fun. Is that something you meet out there, or what would you say if you rated 1 to 10, like the engagement from the teachers and principals and school leaders you meet in for this question? What would you say, rating 1 to 10? Where are they on the engagement scale?
Engagement
for stop anti-bullying,
but they are very engaged in that. But they have, we have different understandings on how to approach that goals, so to speak. So
Interesting. And Heidi, what would you say from your perspective? I was a bit interested in, you focus a bit on the differences between boys and girls.
Yes.
What do you think is the truth behind those figures? Why do you see the difference there?
This is pure guessing. We'll have to remember that.
Yes, qualified guessing. I would
qualified
guess.
guess, yes. But as I also tried to reveal in the presentation, it seems that the way girls bully each other hasn't actually reached the bullying center. I mean, the parents or the teachers or maybe even the children don't think that that kind of behavior is actually bullying. So if they don't think it's bullying, then they won't go to the school and ask a school for an action plan. And if there is no conception of this being bullying, then we also don't get any complaints about it. So this is my guess. I mean, this is what we think. We know that if you ask a child, "Are you bullied?" Maybe it's quite easy to say no, because you don't want that. You don't want to be the victim here, because the victim, that's not a nice person to be either. So it's it's much easier to say, no, this is just the way we speak to each other, so it's okay. And for some of them, it won't be then, it still won't be that. So that's my guess on why we don't see so many girls as boys. It's more visible with the boys. They smack each other one in the face, and then that's very obvious. That must be bullying.
Yes. I know in Sweden we also have trouble with raising numbers when it comes to racial bullying, and that was something you touched on as well, Laila. What is the key to fight this? I mean, it's really horrific, the tendencies we see in many countries now with more racism in school. There is no easy...
I think it's very important not to see it as an isolated thing. Like I also touched upon during my presentation, I see it as part of a larger school culture. And, you know, schools are not desert islands, so they're also a part of a larger society. So we need to recognize that there are some structures and some ways of thinking and ways of meeting different people that color the way that we meet these people. Also, you know, it's not only teachers, it really goes for all of us. So teachers need to be aware of this in order to like make the culture different within the classroom, in order to make people feel like they belong and not, you know, they have to be aware of their own biases and, you know, work with them and recognize larger structures. And so in order to, you know, break with them, or instead of just blindly reproducing, that's what I think.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for sharing your very important work. And I'm so happy to see your trend in Denmark. And I hope we will be inspired by you, so we all can see the same development in our countries next time we meet. So thank you very much, Heidi and Dorte Marie, and of course, Laila. Give them a big hand. Thank you. Bullying